Perfect. So now I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay, can you all see my screen?
It's loading. Yes, we can. Yep.
Perfect. So we just did the check-in question. And before I move on to the next slide, so for those of you who weren't here for our January meeting, we took that time to talk about what the task force will be like moving forward. We've been having some issues with attendance and overall engagement, and we wanted to make sure that all the time that we're spending together, we are spending it like we are maximizing our time together and making sure that everyone who is working on all of these projects is here and engaged. So we spoke a bit about how like ways to make that happen. I will actually I will send everyone the links to the agendas, but that should all be in the last email that I sent in January. So, both the slides and the notes from our last meeting are on that email. So if you want to go check that out, feel free to look through it and give yourself either a refresher or something to think about for the rest of the meeting. So this was the Office of Neighborhood Services was something that one of the members had shared with me as something that could be helpful for other members to know of in case you didn't know. So the Office of Neighborhood Services, it's just basically where all of the neighborhood services are. It's sort of self-explanatory, but every neighborhood has a neighborhood liaison, they do either constituent services, they connect you with city departments and offices, they attend community events and meetings. So they are very much in the community and they are a resource for all of the residents of said neighborhood. And so once I share this slideshow, you can click on these links to find your neighborhood specific services with this first link here. Um, that'll show you like your BPD precinct. It'll show you like I think even trash days. Like it'll be very specific to your neighborhood. And then in this last, oh, that should say neighborhood liaison. Whoops. But once you click that link, it'll show you like a list of all of the neighborhoods that have a liaison, and then you click on it, like your neighborhood specifically, and it'll show you who that person is. Um, I believe Dorchester has two, maybe three liaisons. So, um, if you don't know if you like which part of Dorchester your liaison would be in, I would suggest going to this first link first. It'll ask you to put in your address and then it'll show you all of those services. So feel free to look through that. But that was something that someone had shared as something that could be valuable for the rest of the group. Oh, and as usual, please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions or concerns. Yeah. So based off of our meeting last time, I sort of came up with a new way to structure and organize the task force, and it accounted for just declining engagement and attendance over like since we started, and just trying to make sure that we're still, yes, counselor?
And also one of our teammates who's not here, oh my God, I am forgetting his name. Martin, was it Martin? He had a suggestion about, remember he was the one that gave us the idea of like pivoting. Oh my
Norm,
God.
yes. Norm
Norm.
isn't, yes.
He's not here today, but Norm
Yeah.
really, and Ashley, I think you were in the last meeting, and provided some really good guidance in terms of how we could be spending our time together. And so I just want to acknowledge Norm and also Ashley for their thoughtful feedback that we received. So this is not just coming from us, that this really came from the folks that were in the previous meeting. And Christina, you were also there too. So I just want to thank you all for your thought leadership. And we're hoping that as you hear this new approach and direction, that you guys will embrace it with all of the love that folks poured into it to make it happen.
Yes, thank you, counselor. But At the end of our last meeting, we also spoke about daylight crosswalks, which we'll talk about towards the last half of the meeting. But when it comes to the structure, instead of having a long-term and a short-term group, we're just going to have one big group, as we did at the very, very beginning. This way we can have more people join and just have, like, just be all together. And we can start working towards this small win. And if that ends up being these daylighted crosswalks, that can be our small win. And then we can move on to more systematic issues. But that will come with time and that will be, a democratic process because we are like Councilor Mejia and our team, we are here to support you all, but you all are leading this work. And we want to make sure that that stays true throughout the process.
Yes, and we have a model in our office is called co-governance. And so we do everything in partnership with community. And so this is about co-designing what our experience is going to be. And also the other piece of our time together, the short term and the long term, the reason, in addition to just the efficiency of it, is that we really want to be organizers, right? To really have an idea and have at least one small win that that can continue to build momentum so that we can say we executed this and we were able to make it happen, because I think that sometimes we just there's just so much work that needs to get done and we get overwhelmed. So if we can have a small win, that can help us build momentum as we continue to look at the stuff that might be a little bit harder for us to do. And so that's what the idea that Kiara is going to share with you all as a potential small win. That I think pedestrian safety was really one of the reasons why we all first came together, just around the quality of life issues. And so this is really in line with some of the work that we initially started. So we're really looking forward to bringing this piece of work together. And then the last thing that I will also just offer is that we talked about potentially formalizing this task force as an official task force on within the city council. So regardless of who is leading or whoever the city councilor is or the mayor, that there is a formal task force that is aimed at, you know, looking at the work of the quality of life experiences for our residents. And that's something else that came from our time together last time around.
Yeah, thank you, counselor. So this is our idea is, as I said, having the whole group together, and we can create some sort of um, the webinar function on Zoom. We can use that for our meetings. And so all of the task force members that are currently members, they would be on the panelist side of the Zoom, which means that you're able to mute and unmute freely and then have it open to the rest of the public so that they can be there live with us and have basically live reactions using the chat. And if, for example, someone wants to hear more on their perspective or something, we can invite them to like become a panelist on the Zoom so that they can unmute if that's what they feel comfortable doing. If not, using the chat to sort of give live feedback to the work that we're doing so that it's still open to the public, but at the same time, we have a group that's small enough that we can get the work done without being like bogged down. And this isn't to say that like bigger groups don't get stuff done, but it is harder to manage a larger group of people. So if we have people with different perspectives and opinions all coming together in a small but, like I don't want to say manageable, but working group, then we have the rest of the public chiming in and giving their feedback. But as I said, this task force is led by you all. So, does anyone have any thoughts? Is this a good direction that we're leaning towards? Is there something that you sort of hesitate towards, or just want to hear what you all think?
Hey,
Uh,
Kiara. It's Aaron just chiming in. I think this is great. And I did look at the meeting minutes after the January meeting, but not since. And so it was helpful to have a refresher about what was discussed at that time, and then sort of what we're doing with that feedback. I will say, um, I agree. I think just grappling with my own engagement, it felt, and you and I have talked about this, but it felt a little bit frustrating um, to try and bring forward some of the problems that we were seeing, and have police attend the meeting, and then when we would follow up outside the meeting, absolutely nothing had changed. Nothing, like it was no different than pre-task force. And so I love the idea of focusing on a small win. I think as far as helping members of the task force feel like our time is valued and our input is valued and we're able to help make a difference, that's a great focus, because then we can all rally behind like small incremental changes. And I think that can really harness commitment, because we're all, investing time, hoping that, it makes a difference. So it's great to hear that. I love the new structure. I like the idea of formalizing it, but especially formalizing it if we can be more effective in our aims.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Erin. We're happy to hear that. And we really want you all to know that we deeply care about your time. And we also know that in terms of building momentum, people have to feel like things are getting done. And so that's why this reflection for us was really important, because we want to make sure that you guys feel like your time is being valued. And then this is a good organizing tool in which we can, whether they're a task force member or not, that we can mobilize other residents to action if we do a hearing order, if we, you know, are sending emails to the administration to pass this or to pour money into this particular during the budget cycle. We're gonna ask for some dollars regarding this particular item that we're going to try to get a small win, but it'll be a good way for us to engage the broader community, and maybe they continue to build upon that as a win, and then people can see that we mean business. That's the goal. So thank you for that.
Dylan?
Can I speak?
Oh, yes, Dylan, did you put your hand down?
Just because you called on me, but if the other person wants to speak first, that's okay. Okay. Sorry, just
Oh, no worries.
it'll fly right out of my mind if I don't.
That's cool.
Um, okay, so I have no problem with the structure. I think it's pretty good. I like it. What I was going to bring up as a hopefully small win is I don't know if I have not left Roslindale, only gone to Jamaica Plain because this is where I work and live. And but I don't know about other parts of town, but in Roslindale, we still have snowbanks that are taking up parking spaces. And I don't quite get it. There are parts of, oh, I went to West Roxbury. I help with the food pantry. Okay. They also have snowbanks there. So the way we do it is we have the cars line up to get their food. They take up the street. There's no two-way traffic because of those snowbanks. So I was wondering if that could be a win before spring comes.
Yeah, the snow has really um not just for the reasons that you mentioned, but also people with mobility issues.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we really need to, and I know some of my colleagues have filed hearing orders regarding these snowbanks. And maybe once they book those hearings, I think utilizing the task force to go and amplify and to ask for immediate. I think they're waiting for the snow to melt at this point. I don't know. It just feels.
Sorry for interrupting. There is a hearing on, my goodness. There is a hearing that is happening on snow. Um, I'll send it later, but there is definitely one that is already scheduled. I believe it's for next week or the week after. I can send that to you all. I believe it was I believe it was Counselor Murphy that created that hearing order. Um, but that is something that the council has been working towards. Sorry for interrupting, Counselor.
No,
And
you're not interrupting. You're just adding, you're scaffolding.
thank you. And then Dylan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, on snow stuff, I'm not sure that the city really appreciates how much wheelchair users depend on mobility lanes, sometimes called bike lanes. Um, and so clearing those is also a real good priority. But the main thing that I wanted to say is I like the structure that's proposed, but I'm wondering whether maybe um, setting forth a work product or products from the task force might help us focus and also have more of a sense that like we're actually accomplishing something. Whether that would be maybe a report in a series of hearings, but lots of possibilities.
Sorry, can you ex elaborate a little bit on what you mean by product? You mean like a deliverable?
Like a
Yeah, pretty
PowerPoint
much.
presentation.
That like often a task force will produce as part of their work a written report that so the community can see like, hey, this is what we looked at. This is
Mhm.
what we were able to do. This is what we were not able to do, but are hoping will get done in the future. You know, like these are our recommendations moving forward in these areas.
Yeah, like maybe we could even do Kiara in the future. We can probably partner with one of the higher ed institutions. They can do a deeper dive, like a study. And then maybe what we could do is have that study um, do like a town hall and invite my council colleagues and others who deeply care about said issue. And it could be a town hall on, pedestrian safety and, and best practices and the research shows and, maybe that the task force takes on more than just not just meeting here, but maybe the facilitators and the leaders of these town halls and the organizers of it so that it becomes a more of an active group, not, we meet monthly here. Yes, that's great. But if we were to have a town hall 6 months from now that is produced by the task force, um, that could be a really another great deliverable that's action oriented. And maybe it coincides with the advocacy that we're going to be doing around the pedestrian sidewalks that you're going to, the lighted crosswalks that you're going to share with us in a minute. And maybe we can tie those things together from an organizing standpoint. And then that feels like we're all moving in the same direction and actually, you know, producing things. I love that
Yeah.
idea.
Thank you, Dylan. That sounds amazing. So yeah, I've been jotting some stuff down, taking some notes. But any last thoughts before we move on to daylighted crosswalks?
Kiara, hi, it's Christina.
Hi.
Tina. I'm sorry, I can't find how to raise my hand. In any case, can I just make a very simple comment about the snow removal?
Mhm.
I had some issues in the North End, um, probably the week at the end of the week after the big storm, the first big storm. And there were crosswalks that had been cleared on Commercial Street, which is one of the bigger streets. But the snowbanks, there was a crosswalk that led to a snowbank at the other side of the crosswalk. So you could not get to the sidewalk when you cross that crosswalk. So I took a picture, sent to the 311, copied my neighborhood services person, and with the report to 311 saying this needs to be cleared. This crosswalk is blocked to a pedestrian ramp. And it was cleared within a day. So 311, it does work, I guess, depending on what the issue is. So if you take a picture, say where it's located, send it to 311. And if you have a neighborhood service person, which I believe every neighborhood has, if you copy your report to them and tell them what the issue is, along with the picture and the report to 311, it may get dealt with more quickly, as opposed to waiting for the city to just come by and clear snowbanks. Because they need to know exactly where the problem is. And even though it seems obvious that they should know there's a problem, they don't often do. And if you just keep reminding them, these snowbanks need to be cleared because of this, this, and this. And it may happen sooner than spring.
Yes. I love that, Christina. And one of the things that Kiara did at the beginning of our time together was she added all the neighborhood liaison. So
Okay.
everyone and utilize that 311 app and put those liaisons to work. I know that Mel in the chat said that she hasn't had much luck with the liaison, so maybe scale it up to the district counselor as part of the advocacy. And I would add all of the at-large counselors, put us all to work. We all represent y'all. Um, and I think that once you put the 311 app and then escalate it, people can't, it's harder to ignore you, I guess, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I will,
And
I'll just jump in and say, sorry, Kiara, I know you're trying to kind
no
of respond
worries.
to everyone. I appreciate the advice that Christina is giving. At the same time, I will say I have done that very thing. Just in the last week, I've actually done that 3 times for the
Mm-hmm.
same stretch of sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular example, what's happening is like a jurisdictional battle. The city is saying, we're closing your 311 ticket because that's MBTA property. And the MBTA closes it and says, no, that belongs to Keolis, our vendor. And then Keolis doesn't respond at all. So I think that because there are certainly cases where it's clean and dry and somebody responds, and that's great. But I personally have seen more examples where 311 doesn't do anything. In fact, they close your ticket right away, and you're just kind of doing all the runaround by yourself. And I had the same experience when I tried to report, cars chronically running red lights. I mean, Councilor Mejia, I put you on that email thread to the police as well, and we didn't get responses to that either. So I'm hoping that one of our areas of focus is like how we can band together and commit to whatever goals we end up setting in the long run.
Erin, can you do me a favor? Can you copy Kiara? If you didn't copy Kiara, can you copy Kiara in the future to those emails, since she oversees the task force? And then what she
Of course. Yep.
potential,
Yep.
what
And
she'll do. Go ahead, sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, if Kiara, if you get an email like that and you're copied on it, elevate it to Corey, and then you take the initiative to reply all to our IGR person for BPD or BTD, and copy some of the superintendents and some of the folks that we know in that area, the district, sergeant or the captain, so that we can. Because you're right, Erin, sometimes when we respond, people can't, it's harder to ignore. So just, Kiara, if you sent it, can you please forward it over to Kiara? And Kiara, let's I mean, it's already done and with, but just in the future.
Yeah, I think that's great, Councilor Mejia. I did copy Kiara, and in fact, Kiara and I talked by phone after I had sent like 3 separate videos of Longwood shuttles running red lights and of cars running red lights, one of a cyclist almost getting hit.
Wow.
And nobody responded, not anybody from the police, nothing. So it was like, it was one really frustrating example of like why I personally felt disengaged, because we made all
Mm.
these kind of hopes and dreams, and then I offered video evidence of an intersection and it didn't really get anywhere. Um, so absolutely, I will copy Kiara, you in the future, and then maybe we can um,
And
debrief on anything else.
you know what this is why I love these meetings, because what it does, it provides us insight. And it seems like, you know, per Mel's feedback and yours just recently and other folks, maybe Kiara, we should do an audit or a hearing specifically on just the city's response to constituent cases, right? Like it'd be great to hear from the administration, you know, how they pick and choose what they end up responding to or not, right? And then that could provide us some feedback in terms of what we need to do to improve the communication flow between constituents and the administration.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
all
we'll
think of
do.
that?
Sounds good. I'll
Because
tag it to the policy team as well.
yeah, yeah, and I think that what we'll need, Aaron and like Mel and other folks who haven't had much of pleasant experience or the results that you were looking for, if you can help us find other people, so when we do host the hearing, you know, there's a critical mass of folks saying the same thing, because once we get things on the record, you can't ignore it.
I love that suggestion.
Can I just add one thing before we move to the next part of the agenda?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you guys so much. So I was just listening to everyone, and I agree that having deliverables is essential for us to move the needle. I do think having panelists coming in and having these conversations, their thoughts, feedback, etc., is great. I will say, being part of Spark Boston, that part of the council, 311 did, and different parts and different departments of the city of Boston would kind of explain what it is that they do and how it is that they close the amount of cases, exactly what Julia was talking about before. So I do think having that education on a public manner might be a great idea. That way, we're not just opening that to council members, but also people in a town hall, for example, that need explanations on how to relay certain concerns that they have in their neighborhood. And finally, I just want to also be mindful of like very important topics such as pedestrian safety, but I do want to not be tone deaf as well as to why people may be fearful of speaking at this time, as well as people being concerned for their safety, being outside on the street as well. So being vocal and having a voice is scary during these times. And I just want to highlight that as something that we can address together as well.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. You did bring that up in our last meeting. And for those who may not know, or, you know, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows at this point, as you know, there's been a lot of concern around ICE and immigration issues for a lot of folks who are undocumented, who, you know, may be afraid to participate. And so we just want to, as we continue to move through this work, is thinking about what inclusive engagement looks like without putting people in harm's way. And so, yes, that is something that is definitely top of mind for our office as we continue to navigate these conversations. So thank you for that, Christina.
Yes, thank you. Um, so now we're going to move on to the next part of the meeting of the agenda, which is daylighted crosswalks. So as just some review, I'm going to send out the link to these slides so you can click through all of the links. But Transportation Alternatives has a really good article on different types of daylighting and just what daylighting is in general. So basically, as you can see, I'm going to use this pointer thing because it looks really cool. But so usually cars are parked in between, in like within 20 feet of a crosswalk, which in the state of Massachusetts is illegal. But creating barriers for cars to park in within those 20 feet means that drivers can see the crosswalk and anyone who is crossing the street, therefore making it safer for people who are at intersections, especially those without lights. Cars are supposed to stop when there are pedestrians waiting to cross the street at an intersection, at a marked intersection. So being able to see that there's people waiting to cross um, will hopefully make it safer and make cars more aware of their surroundings and the people who are traveling around. Um, so that's what daylighting is. Daylighting is usually creating this sort of barrier here to make sure that no one is parking or like blocking that view for a driver, so that everyone can see what is happening around them. So last meeting, I was asked to look for cost, like around how much it would cost to daylight a crosswalk. So flexible, yes, Dylan. I think you're muted if you're speaking.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if we're wedded to the flex posts because they seem to get knocked over a lot, and the zebra bumps seem to be holding up a little bit better. They're newer, so it's hard to tell. But
Yeah, no, we are not. Flex pulls is just what was originally brought up, but you said that they were called the zebra
I think
stripes,
zebra bumps.
zebra bumps. Okay.
They're the new, like they're bumps and they have stripes painted on them. Hence the zebra name. And they've been going up for some of the mobility lanes to demarcate them instead of the flex posts, because the flex posts, like, people just drive right over them.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah, those
plenty of them
bumps.
destroyed. So these are zebra bumps. Let's see just if a quick Google search can get us there. So around 45 to $75, give or take, for zebra bumps. But that would probably vary on how big the bumps are. Because I know that there has been, I've heard from different constituents mention how specifically speed humps aren't tall enough to actually stop cars from speeding, so they just speed through the humps. So that would be something to consider if zebra bumps were implemented. But for so now we know that those zebra bumps cost between $45 to $75 each. Flex poles are 40 to 50 each. And the estimate that I shared with you all was, let's say, 4 flex poles, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, something like that. That's $200 at most ish. Probably buying in bulk would be cheaper, but let's say $200 for 4 flex poles. Then around $600 for the paint and just overall painting, and then $800 for any labor associated with daylight and crosswalks. It would come down to around $2,000 each. I've also seen estimates are around 3,000 per intersection. That is just something to keep in mind. Obviously, different crosswalks, I mean, different intersections require different things. Some intersections aren't two-way, they're just one way, which means that you would probably need to be daylighting both sides of the street, not just one. But that is give or take the price tag for it. And just as an example, I'm gonna move my soon to a side. So Lancaster, which is the example that I gave last meeting, they had a really good info page on what daylighting is, the benefits of it, and all of that. So if you haven't seen it, it's in the daylighted crosswalks slide in our last meeting slides. Um, but that is definitely something to look at if you're still a little confused on what it is. But they spent 12.7 million for daylighting 84 intersections, but those dollars also went towards creating more bike lanes, traffic signals for pedestrians, and just flashing beacons, which I believe they're the lights that like flash on the streets to make sure that cars are um like extra aware of their surroundings when they're driving. But Lancaster is much smaller, has like an eighth of our population, so it's very small compared to Boston, and it's rural. So its landscape is different than Boston. And that is something to keep in mind. But if it costs 12 million to do all of that in a smaller rural area, we could give or take, if my estimates are somewhat right, which again, they are total estimates. I like did it off the top of my head with the painting and the labor because it's a little harder to find out those costs, but I kind of just guessed at that. But let's say that it's 3,000 at most per intersection. With a $5,000 to $6,000 budget, we could do at least two intersections. So that's just something to keep in mind. Um, yeah, I'm going to move on. So there's different types of daylighting. So there can be daylighting with just flex poles. Did someone unmute? Okay. There can be just like flex poles or the zebra bumps on one side. There could also be um, parking racks, like for bikes, bus stops, which we have seen, but usually these bus stops are in the middle of the street, which that is a different, I don't believe that counts as daylighting, but daylighting would be like having a bus stop kind of pop out in that 20 feet between crosswalk and parking. You could have you have a tree or just some green, like a little green space in that area. You could have social stuff. So this can be like benches. Maybe I know that I believe it's in the North End where they do, um, where some restaurants and spaces have little outdoor area. That could be something that can be done there. Or they could just be, as I said, those flex poles. Now, from this diagram, we can assume that this beige-ish color is sidewalk. However, that could be sidewalk. There are cases where other places have put in sidewalk in that area and just brought it out for that corner, making that intersection smaller and cars are able to see the person trying to cross. However, it is probably much more expensive to bring out a whole sidewalk because then you have to redo it and then add onto it. So, thinking about the fact that our budget will be very strained, um, and we want to make sure that if this is something that we move forward with, we want to make it happen. Um, it might be best to consider using those flex poles or zebra bumps instead of bringing out a whole sidewalk, just extending it with those materials. And I believe I mentioned last time too that we can engage different groups. We can engage local artists to paint designs here to make it bright so people are more aware that that's not a space that they're supposed to be in. Counselor?
Yes, and also what we can do is pilot it in certain neighborhoods so we don't have to do the whole entire city. There's 9 districts, right? And perhaps we pick one major intersection in each district, just like just to give everybody a little bit of love. So we don't have to pick and choose. Maybe that could be a way that we target our advocacy. But I just want to manage everybody's expectations. Kiara set us up lovely, recognizing the financial strains that we are going to potentially be experiencing here. We just want to manage all of our expectations, but maybe we could roll things out, little by little. And Ashley got her hand up.
Thank you, Counselor. I was actually thinking of something similar to what you just shared. Is that like either piloting in specific areas so we can be conscientious of the budget, but also maybe we're not looking at it just within this one budget cycle, but we are able to look at a longer term strategy and introducing what it could look like, piloting it in one area and then testing out the impacts and the benefits of daylighting a sidewalk, and then what will, or not daylighting a intersection, and then what that budget could look like in increasing and going to different neighborhoods over a period of time. So that way, kind of the stark, oh, it cost $12.7 million dollars isn't as big when you're looking at it over 5 years, and we're maybe looking at the most um, dangerous crosswalks first.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yes.
Ashley, for that. And I think Ashley also, when we met last time around, we discussed that we would be able to get some data from the city regarding kind of the most dangerous crosswalks and intersections, and then rolling it out with that data with the highest need first, so that we don't feel the who deserves it most, that we can utilize data as a way to inform that work and then roll it out with the goal of having it across the city, but rolling it out little by little. Then we grow into it literally. I think fiscal responsibility is going to be a theme for us, y'all. So I just want to manage everybody's expectations here, but we are definitely wanting to be the champions of this work. And so we want the task force to really help inform the advocacy that we should be doing on behalf of pedestrian safety. So thank you for that. And Ashley, you still have your hand up.
Yeah, no, I had another idea as you were talking. If we are also considering, like, people will be frustrated that it's like, oh, well, why didn't my neighborhood get chosen, even with data being used to present why that's the case. And so we could also look at lower cost opportunities for engagement with those neighborhoods around like the same issue and the same topic. And so bringing in volunteers who maybe have interest, I think utilizing groups like Spark or the task force to connect with some of the neighborhoods that are being vocal about why their neighborhood wasn't chosen.
Thank you, Ashley, for adding that. I do want to also add that being part of Main Streets Foundation, they're very involved as far as business owners and residential for their distinguished communities. So I like the idea of doing it as a pilot program, partnering with other foundations. Main Streets, we have these conversations. So I think that would be a good next step to talk to these people just to get everyone on board and on the same page.
I love that because what you guys are doing is opening up the tents, right? And not feeling like we're the ones who have to carry everything. And the more stakeholders that we engage, the easier it might be for us to move that work forward. And I see, Mel, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Um, Two things. I wanted to ask how the data what sorts of data is being used right now to determine like what parts of that we will be doing this at? What are
We
Well,
still
we,
haven't
we're
decided
not
what
there yet.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not even there. We're just brainstorming now about how we will go about it. So we were thinking maybe data could be a good way and a good tool, but we
okay?
we 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 don't know that yet. We are
Okay.
here figuring it out as we go. But I see Mary and then Dylan.
Oh, I wasn't done. That
Oh,
was
I'm sorry, Mel.
so
Okay,
I had
Mel. Go.
that was the
Okay, go.
first part because depending on the types of data, like for instance, 301 data, there are a lot of there are people are some people are do not use it because they just don't think it's useful, etc. There are a lot of biases against 311 depending on the parts of the city you're in. Okay, like so I don't even think for people who I know who speak Spanish, what? They don't know what it is. And different immigrant communities don't know what it is. That's one thing. But the other thing I was going to bring up too is are there main streets in all of the neighborhoods? Because I don't believe that's true.
I believe.
No, Mattapan doesn't have one. Not everyone does. But
Right.
if they
East
don't have
Boston?
a main street, if they don't have one, what they do have are civic neighborhood associations and neighborhood councils, and they're it was just a suggestion. Not every neighborhood is going to have one, but whatever the equivalent of that is in that neighborhood, we can tap into. And regarding the data, I think that in order for it to maintain the integrity of what we're trying to do, I wouldn't rely on the city to provide us anything because um, I think that we should be working in partnership with an academic institution, an independent party, so that we are, that we can trust. I'm not saying that, oh my God, I'm not saying I don't trust. Well, I am saying I don't trust. I feel like we need our own independent analysis of this situation.
I don't trust it either. So
I said it. Sorry, everybody. I said what I said.
We can bring in those higher institutions, as Counselor and Dylan mentioned. We can bring in those higher ed institutions to do studies and evaluate how the intersection, like the levels of like how dangerous it is, and how people like if people feel safe in it before it's implemented and after to see if there is a net positive
Yeah.
effect that's happening. So we can work
Yeah.
with them and they can do those studies so we can get that third party data and then implement.
Yeah. Ashley said in the chat that I just want to uplift is that we can also work with public health institutions and public health folks to work with us on this initiative. So I think I forget who was next, but whoever is on
Mary
deck.
Ann.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say that I think in Boston, each district is unique and not one plan is going to fit the whole city. And we should consider that. For instance, here in the North End, the streets are narrow, the sidewalks are narrow. And as far as crosswalks are concerned, with all the snow, we don't have them anymore. The cars park there, the trucks park there, they park at corners. You can't walk in the North End anymore with all of the parking and illegal parking. It's just getting out of hand.
You're
Thank you.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Mary. And I think as we continue to have these conversations, Kiara understanding that not one size fits all, and then like to Mary's point, is identifying what would work best for the North End and applying a different strategy. You're absolutely right. You, even when there's no snow, you can't really walk around the North End to get around this. So yeah, I hear you for sure.
Thank you.
Oh, and Dylan, unless Marianne, you have something else to add.
No, I
Okay.
have plenty more, but it'll take 5 days.
Okay. Dylan, the floor is yours.
I'm glad the counselor raised higher ed as a potential partner. I serve on a board with Peter Firth, who's a professor at Northeastern. He's done a stress map, or has worked on with others a stress map on level of stress for cycling in the area, and there might be one for pedestrians as well. Um, I'd love to invite him to come in and help us with the data and orient us if that's something that would interest folks.
Yes, and maybe we can invite them to one of our future task force meetings so that
Yep.
we can design what that looks like as a team, right? And everyone can learn from them and also we can share our feedback and thoughts and then maybe they can put something together based on what they've learned from our time together.
Awesome.
Does that sound good? Okay, you got a lot to work on, Kiara. All these to-dos. Keep it moving.
All right. So with that said, Christina, you said in the chat that our first step should be reviewing facts so that we can focus on the intersections that present the highest safety risk. Yes, our next meeting, I will do my best to get that data and share it with you all so that we can look at it and then see what are the areas that need, a little more love when it comes to their intersections. Um, so we can definitely do that for the next meeting once we have all of that data. Our to-dos, like everyone was asked to identify a crosswalk in their neighborhood that is considered dangerous by the people who live in this area. Who live in the area. So some members did share some of their intersections. I also included some that were shared um, last year when we were meeting. So first one, this one's in Dorchester. It's the intersection between Dorchester Ave and Columbia. So this is what the intersection looks like. Is there The idea with this is like an exercise to see how we can start thinking about implementing these daylighted crosswalks. I did forget to mention that there are many crosswalks where there's a sign around 20 feet before the intersection that says no parking from here, and like the arrow will point towards the intersection. Some people do still park there, but there are signs that sort of prevent it from happening, and it is because it is legal in Massachusetts to park in that space. But yeah, um is there anything that you all see that can be improved to implement these crosswalks? So I think this one, let me see. So
Sorry, I just wanted to add,
yeah,
being in living in Dorchester, this was one of the intersections that I added to the list. It's Dorchester Ave and Columbia Road. It's on the way to the Expressway 3. Um, yeah, this is one of these that are statistically it's fact-based that it's one of the highest risk for pedestrians. Um, and then the second one we'll talk about later, but yes, this one was the second one that I actually added in there.
sorry, the picture is not accurate, and whoops, I did put Ave instead of road, so I do apologize for that. But we can look at the Fields Corner one after, but just wanted to note that. Sorry, Christina. Is there anything else that you were going to add?
Yeah, I mean, well, these streets are fairly narrow, so there needs to be that right lane in order for people who are approaching from the bottom half of the photo. If you can see the singular car, there's a right lane next to the gas station. Um, that needs to be there. So there's just thinking of these different spaces where certain things can be added is probably the hardest part of an engineer's job with this street and this intersection. But um, yeah, I'd love to hear any feedback or thoughts anyone has on it.
I will say, Christina, you must live close to me because I walk this intersection regularly, and agree there's definitely opportunities here. I would also say when we started this task force, I brought up two other intersections that are actually very close to this intersection, and I would say between the three of those, they're probably the worst I've personally traveled in the Boston area. So one is K Circle, which is actually just a couple blocks from the intersection that's being screen shared. Oh, you've got it. Oh my gosh, amazing. Amazing. Okay, yeah. I'm so glad this is on there, because of all the intersections I've traveled, both of those I've traveled many times, and I have had near death experiences in K Circle just countless times, just because of how fast cars are coming in. It's unregulated completely. There's no stoplights whatsoever. Um, and then the other one is Edward Everett Square, which is also in Dorchester. So I'm really glad we're focusing on these, and would echo the characterization that these are some real easy first opportunities.
Yeah, so I did add K Circle. The other one I did not is not on the slideshow, but I can definitely add it to the running document that we have with problem intersections. Christina,
That sounds good. We don't have to boil the ocean to the very point about little victories. I would be so happy if we made progress even with these two.
yeah. Ashley, your hand is up.
Um, I was just looking at the Fields Corner intersection, and I wonder because I live like near Harvard Ave, and one of the things I noticed with that intersection is that they'll do all lights are red for pedestrians to cross at that time. And I don't know if like when y'all are talking about the danger of that crosswalk, if we're thinking about, I mean, there are so many aspects, but for pedestrians, is there an opportunity for there to be a all lights are red opportunity at that stop if it doesn't already exist?
It does.
Uh,
I love that suggestion because I always feel safest. I think that's called a barn stance when they do that, and that the Dorchester Ave, Columbia Ave does have a barn stance. K Circle does not.
hmm.
Yeah, just speaking on my own personal experience, my first job, I was a teaching assistant and that was my first job. And so I would take the bus home with like all of the students because it left me like a block away from where I lived, where I live. So I would it's like the intersection of, I live in Rosendale, by the way, Washington and Beach Street. And I would go from one corner of Washington and just cross the street when it was all red. And I did get some looks because no one does that. They usually just cross like an L. But I just went right across. And I did feel safe. However, this was something that I felt and something that has been brought up by another member that sometimes in certain neighborhoods, the time that's given for pedestrians to cross the street isn't nearly enough time from what is needed. So, for example, when I was crossing that intersection, which is a pretty busy intersection, Washington Street is like the main street is like one of the biggest main streets in Rosendale. So, I would have to speed walk across the intersection so that I wouldn't, be in the middle of the street when the light turned I mean green. So that is something also to consider that while having all reds is a good thing, we also need to be thinking about how long those red lights are out for so that we give people enough time to cross the street. So, um, that's one thing that I wanted to mention. We talked about Key Circle. There's also someone had brought up Ruggles and Tremont Street. This is also a pretty big one with Ruggles, the station being up here, I believe. This was something that was brought up, as well as in the north end, this big intersection with North Washington, Thatcher, and Valenti Way. And I think this is Medford Street down here, but Tina, Marianne, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but yeah, this was one that was brought up, and in the Back Bay, Dartmouth and Beacon Street was also, this is not a great picture, but this was also one that was brought up as being a problem intersection. Tina, I see in the chat that you said if I had shared a city website that focused on problem intersections where there are more pedestrian accidents. So I don't remember sharing a website that focused specifically on problem intersections, but I believe I did share the Vision Zero website, which is they have different databases for what specific issues that happen, like accidents and stuff that happen in the city. So I can share that right now. What that looks like. So they have safety concerns map, injury crash maps, and then a dashboard with everything. So I'm gonna put this in the chat so you all can look through it. I believe, and don't quote me on it because it's been a while since I've looked at this, but I believe that they do base their data on 311 reports. So wanted to bring that up for you all, since I know that there was some skepticism around where those numbers are and who specifically uses it and which neighborhoods use it more than others and how that might be biased. So I do want to give a special shout out to Tina though, because she did give some feedback um, around some obstacles and some suggestions moving forward. So um, the obstacles to making, oh, guess Dylan.
I was just wondering whether maybe a cheap thing that could be done on even more intersections is just painting the curb to show that, like painting the curb red to show that you don't park there.
Yes, so I'm gonna go back, but most intersections, at least the way that they have been done in other cities, is that they will put something there, but I do think that it is a great way to connect with local artists to have them, like we can either do full red or we can do a different color. We can do stripes, although I don't know how effective stripes would be. I know that that was something that was brought up by someone in our last meeting that stripes aren't super effective at keeping people out of the way, or like out of that space. But if we could partner, like if this is something that you all are interested in, we could partner with local artists in Boston and they can have like little street murals, which would be cool because they could have a chance to have like give their art some exposure, but then and make our city more beautiful, but then also make it a way to keep the cars out of the way and make sure that that like visibility is like we're maximizing our visibility and reducing any
Oh yeah, yeah. Physical
accidents.
barriers are most effective, but the visual stuff is better than nothing in the other
Yeah.
places.
Yeah,
I do.
absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I do want to add as well that an art installation was installed in that Fields Corner area, and it has been backed by studies and done in other cities as well. That creating the art installation in the crosswalk does make it safer. And like you mentioned, Kiara, walking from one side of the street to another, that's not necessarily a crosswalk, but you still feel safe walking across the street is something that has kind of happened as well in that area, just based on my experience there, as well as the crosswalks being on for a little bit longer has been helpful. So I think the art installations are an excellent idea.
Yeah. And Christina, if you have access to those studies, if you wouldn't mind sharing them so that the rest of the group can also take a look at it to see, like maybe to get some inspiration on what's been done in other places and what's been proven to be effective. If we're moving forward with
Absolutely.
it, yeah, thank you so much. If we're moving forward with a data-centered approach, I want to make sure that we all have access to that data so that we can make the best decisions with all of the necessary data. Which, will be one of my to-dos. I will get you guys that data for our next meeting. Um, and well, I would try to get the data. I believe that the 311 might be easier to get just because it is a little more public, but I will see if there's any other data. And if anyone has any other like studies or something that might help, please, please, please feel free to either reply all to the email chain that we have going or email it or text it to me personally, and then I can disperse it to the group. But yeah, don't be shy to hit that like reply all button. Um, but going back to Tina's fabulous feedback. So, yes, there is that parking restriction. That's you can't um, park within 20 feet of a intersection, but it is true it's not very enforced. At most, I've seen there are parts of the city where I have seen the sidewalk kind of butt out into the street, making that crosswalk shorter, and therefore pedestrians have to travel less space and are more like are easily seen by cars. However, that is not something that has been done throughout the city or in other places. I've kind of just I believe I saw it in Back Bay maybe in one area. But I've also seen places where you'll have this, I forget what they're called. I think they're called pedestrian islands. You have the sidewalk, a mobility lane, and then you have like a little island before crossing the street, or you'll have it a little island in between two opposite lanes so that it gives a pedestrian a little bit of space before crossing the street again, in case one side has a lot of traffic and the other one does not. So that's something else that I've seen. Um, yeah, so thank you, Dylan. Sidewalk build outs are very effective. So that is something that we can consider when doing the daylighting crosswalks. However, as I did mention, they are a bit more expensive and there's some budget restraints, but that is definitely something to keep in mind for the future, just trying to figure out the best ways to move this work forward and make it sustainable. Um, Businesses may push back because of loss of parking. That is true, and I don't think that it'll only be businesses. I feel like there will be a lot of residents who might also be pushing back just because of that loss of space, especially in neighborhoods where parking is already scarce. Um, but I like I believe it was Christina's idea of bringing in Main Streets and other associations who are doing a lot of the pushback of why their neighborhood wasn't chosen. This can be a way that can also be applied to places where it is going to be piloted, but there is still some pushback from people in that neighborhood just to, increase that engagement. It was someone.
Yeah,
I, yeah.
I was gonna say really quick is that I think from a co-governance standpoint, that it is important for us to listen to all stakeholders. And I think that the best ideas usually happen when there's opposition from other folks. And I think that finding a win-win for everybody is what we should be aiming towards, right? And putting pedestrian safety at the center where everybody wins. So I think it would behoove us to definitely engage Main Streets because it would be the small businesses that will most likely push the hardest.
Yep, exactly. So, just overall engagement with
I
everyone.
can take that.
Okay. Dylan, I believe you said that they were movers or there was someone helping you out at your house.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there are folks helping me. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in or anything, but
Oh no, I just have I was distracted by shuffling around me at the moment.
no worries. Uh, so Tina's last obstacle that she listed was that Public Works is short-staffed, so that is also something to keep in mind. Um, And it'll take a while because there needs to be the right conditions to do all of this work. And the idea of flexibles, whether or not the city will want to implement them, but Dylan did mention the zebra bumps, so that is something to also keep in mind. And then Tina's suggestions are being part of everyone's neighborhood group. I know that some of you are involved with neighborhood groups already. If you aren't, feel free to, and if you are interested in joining them, feel free to let me know and I can help you find the neighborhood group that's closest to you or that you might, want to join. So find neighborhood liaison. This is something that we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting and just interacting with them, making sure that they are aware of the struggles that you and your neighbors are facing. Reporting issues to 311, we did also discuss that. And then sharing the report with the task force and neighborhood liaison. So yeah, if there's any report that you all want to share or have reported, feel free to CC me in that email. And we can try to follow up if you don't get a response and try to push for that follow up. Um, yeah, so, oops. So is there anything that you all want to add or anything that has come up? Yes, Ashley?
So when is the plan to move us to the structure where like we are panelists and other community members will be able to kind of join in and chat in these meetings?
We can start that as soon as next meeting. And I can create a form and you all can send it to any community members that you know are dedicated to improving public safety. Um, Feel free to share it with them and then I can send them a link so that they can also join in. But yeah, if you all want, we can start that in March.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I can already think of people who I know who would be interested in being involved. And I know like we all apply to be a part of the task force, but um, are there opportunities if people are being regularly engaged and active as like kind of chat participants, what that looks like for maybe them to be able to level up into the task force, like depending on like to be like kind of in more conversation with us.
I love that as a really great recruitment um tactic, right? So I think absolutely if folks are super engaged and are going deeper, then we want to work with people who want to work with us, obviously, right? So I think that there should be a pathway towards becoming an official steering committee member. So yes, I love that idea. And maybe we should add that in the RSVP form is there if there's an interest to be more meaningfully engaged in the future, what would that look like? You know, would they be interested in it so that we can gauge that interest from the get-go?
Yeah, I can definitely add that to an RSVP. And did someone, oh, Tina, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to share something I noticed in Somerville a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was. Um, it has to do with the pedestrian safety issue. And I actually reached out to the traffic department in Somerville to get a little more information about what I saw and what it was on Winter Hill, which is a busy street going right through Somerville into near going toward Tufts. There were I'm going to call them civilian flaggers or crossing guards, or I'm not really sure what the story was, but I witnessed in two locations people on either side of the street. So it's a Winter Hill is about 3 lanes on two sides, going in each direction. And there were people in bright, in fluorescent jackets with stop signs, and they would step out into the street with the stop sign and stop traffic for people to cross. And it was at locations without a light, so there wasn't an official walk light for people for pedestrian lights. And I was driving, so I couldn't really get a good idea of what was happening there and whether. So I wrote to Somerville. I wrote to the Somerville Traffic Department, asked someone to get back to me and tell me what that's about, if it's a temporary thing, if it has to do with the conditions with the snow piles and people can't see someone crossing the street, so they needed to add someone to stop traffic for pedestrians. So in any case, I just wanted to mention that because we had talked about civilian flaggers in some intersections back, a couple of sessions ago. So when I find out what the story is with Somerville and whether these are civilians or cadets or what the story is with these people, I will report back. But I thought it was interesting to see some active crossing guards or whatever you want to call them, helping people across the street with stop signs and so forth. So I thought that might tie into this whole conversation.
Yes, and you know what, Tina, recently, Councilor Coletta Zapata, and during our budget seasons over the last few years, we've been talking about like red shirts, reintegrating this youth program into the mix. And while I'm not thinking this would be for young people per se, but I think one of the discussions that we had in a few months ago, or at some point, I don't even know, I can't keep track of all these days, but at some point during our time, we did discuss alternates to um, cross guards and civilian flaggers, and also creating a pipeline for young people to enter the urban planning design space as a career explorations, as a way to expose them to this as a viable career for the older kids. Yes, those are the things that I think, Kiara, we should like unpack a little bit further from a budgetary standpoint so that we can pilot it and see what that would look like. And Tina, once you
Yes,
get that information, please share it with Kiara so we can do some
yes,
follow-up.
please do. And I can
Yeah,
also share it
absolutely.
to the rest of the group. And just something that came to mind as Tina was talking is there are school crossing guards who work part-time. And so while they're not crossing, like while they're not in these school intersections, maybe if they are willing to, we can also have those same crossing guards who already have that training work at the busier intersections. There are issues with that because usually when schools come out of session and the crossing guards are there, those are the busiest times, so they usually get a little more dangerous. So then you would need other people covering those intersections while they're in the schools. But that was just something that came to mind as you were um, saying that, Tina. So thank you. Does anyone have anything else that they want to add any about the intersections? All right, so that means that we are nearing the end. So as a reminder, our next two meetings is March 19th at 6 p.m. Sorry, that should say 6:30. I do apologize because I did say 6 p.m. at today's emails. I meant 6:30. I don't know why 6 got in my head. It's 6:30, and so I'll make sure to change that. But March 19th, 6:30, April 16th, 6:30. Thank you, Christina. So Christina just shared the thank you. The safety study that she mentioned earlier, so that's in the chat, but she'll also send it via email. So, thank you for that. So, also in the slideshow, we have the research document, just has a bunch of links to different sites. If you all send me something with, like the studies and stuff, I can make a whole new tab on that document with just all of the studies on crosswalk safety so that we can have it all on one document. There's also a link to the task force folder with all of our documents, so feel free to look through that. Problem intersections document, it just lists out the intersection and the picture. I will update them to include all of the new ones that we've spoken about today, so those will be in there. And finally, the People's Agenda on February 24th. So, whoops. People's Agenda. So this is a way to bring community in and help us like as the flyer says, build power, organize, and help us create the priorities that you all want from our office in the next legislative term. So, this will, there's like,
I was going
Counselor
to say
Julie.
this is really important.
Mhm.
Uh, so especially because there's going to be so many competing interests in terms of like our budget priorities and our policy. And we want to make sure that we are creating a space where everyone has a chance to be heard. And if y'all show up, and it would be really helpful to have your presence there, especially around some of the things that you want to advocate for, because the goal is to try to identify some things that we can all align in. And so just want to give it an extra plug. It's going to be in person. There'll be dinner. We'll have food and refreshments, and you know, we didn't advertise that because we don't want people to show up just for the food. We want people to show up, but you'll get the intel first that there will be food provided there.
Yes. So the event is from 4 to 8 p.m. The 4 to 6 session is more youth-led versus 6 to 8 is more adult-led. However, feel free to come before the adult session and just listen into what the youth have to say, and what their priorities are. So, anytime between that 4 to 8 slot, feel free to stop by. We would love to have you there and to get your input on what our policy agenda should be. So I did put the RSVP in the chat. It was also sent in the email earlier, and um, I will also send it again in the next few days just to remind you all in case you haven't already RSVP'd and are interested in going. Um, so now, before we end, just one final, if anyone has any questions, Feel free to ask a question, or if not, one word to close out the meeting. Okay, so yes, I saw Tina and then Mel.
Well, thank you for all your hard work and research. And that's more than one word, but thank you.
Of course.
Imaginative.
Nice.
I'll jump in and say hopeful. I really appreciate that the mindset of this group is collecting small wins and kind of resetting, recalibrating with some new goals in mind. So feeling hopeful.
I'll say focused.
Productive.
Energized.
Grateful. This is Counselor Mejia. You can't see me, but I want y'all to know I'm incredibly grateful that we get to do this in partnership with you all. And it is not easy to keep people engaged. And you all show up. It may not be every meeting, but the fact that we've gotten through so much here today, and made some decisions collectively as a group, I'm feeling, incredibly grateful. And thank you again to Kiara, our fearless leader in this. You're just so amazing.
Thank you. My word is energetic.
My word is optimistic.
Awesome. Has anyone not gone that would like to go? I think we got everyone. Yeah. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, um, that's it from us. So we'll see you via email and then March 19th. Also, hopefully February 24th for the People's Agenda.
Yes, hope to see
Thank
you all
you.
there. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.